All right, friends. So the GOP had their third and final debate last night that mostly no one watched. But I watched it, so you don't have to. We're going to go through just the highlights. I'm not going to make you guys sit through the whole thing like I did last time. I pulled the clips that I thought were the most important, but you guys can feel free to let me know in the comments if I missed anything. It's definitely important to go through the debate and talk about what happened because we need to prep ourselves for the fact that Donald Trump might be the president. Looking at the polling right now, I know it's a year out, but it's for that reason that I think it's important to go through these things and look at what these goons are saying because one or two of them will probably be in his cabinet, or maybe just one. Anyway, I got my coffee, got my Snuggie. It's fucking freezing in my apartment. Like freezing. People who live in New York, you know how it is. All right, let's go.
I will fight for you and I will win for you. You left government service in 2018 with just $100,000 in the bank. 5 years later, you're reportedly worth $8 million, thanks to lucrative corporate speeches and board memberships like you had with Boeing. Weeks ago, you met with Wall Street heavyweights, including leaders from JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and BlackRock. Several other billionaire investors are reportedly ready to endorse you, or recently have, all of which comes with expectations. Aren't you too tight with the banks and the billionaires to win over the GOP's working class base, which mostly wants to break the system, not elect someone beholden to it?
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. First I'll tell you, just to respond to Ron, he continues to lie about my record. I actually said his Don't Say Gay bill didn't go far enough because it only talked about gender until the third grade. And I said it shouldn't be done at all, that's for parents to talk about, it shouldn't be talked about at school. We passed pro-life bills. We moved in unemployment from 11% to 3%. We took on the unions and we took on Obama. When it came to the unions, the Syrian refugees, and everything in between. And so I've had a fight. And so as much as Ron says that, that's not true. But when it comes to these corporate people that want to suddenly support us, we'll take it. But I don't ask them what their policies are. They ask me what my policies are. And I tell them what it is. Sometimes they agree with me, sometimes they don't. Some don't like how tough I am on China. Some don't like the fact that I've signed pro-life bills. Some don't like the fact that I may oppose corporate bailouts. That doesn't matter. That's who I am. And that's why the most conservative grassroots group in the country, Americans for Prosperity, endorsed me last week.
You didn't respond to the criticism. It wasn't about the parents' rights education bill. It was about prohibiting sex change operations on minors. They do puberty blockers. These are irreversible. Talk to Chloe Cole. She went through this. Now she's an adult. She's warning us that she may never be able to have kids again. That is what Nikki Haley opposed. She said the law shouldn't get involved in that. And I just ask you, if you're somebody that's going to be the president of the United States and you can't stand up against child abuse, how are you going to be able to stand up for anything? That is the truth. We have it on video.
I said that if you have to be 18 to get a tattoo, you should have to be 18 to have anything done to change their gender.
Okay, so the first thing I want to point out is her first question. When was the last time you heard a Democrat ask about corruption? Don't get it twisted. It's not that the Republicans actually care about corruption. As you'll see, they don't oppose corruption at all. What they oppose is the woke industrial complex. So like, they want to attack trans people. They want to attack any efforts to mitigate climate change. But it's so disappointing to me that basically since Bernie's 2016 and 2020 campaign, nobody on the left talks about corruption in any meaningful way. Now, these jokers get to pretend like they care. And I'm not saying overall, because overall they still ask really fucking stupid questions that don't actually matter to everyday Americans that are struggling out here. They have a bizarre war on ESG. So when they say they're taking on corruption, that's what they mean.
I think there's a time and place for everything. We need somebody in the White House who absolutely is going to be a fighter when it counts. And I did say that there were some good people on that stage in that third debate. Doug Burgum was on that stage at that time. And I'll say that jokingly, Ron DeSantis is a good person too. I want to go back though to Nikki Haley's comment from earlier that she is somehow not responding to the will of these donors. Nikki, you were bankrupt when you left the UN. After you left the UN, you became a military contractor. You actually started joining service on the board of Boeing, whose back you scratched for a very long time, and then gave foreign multinational speeches like Hillary Clinton is. And now you're a multimillionaire. That math does not add up. It adds up to the fact that you are corrupt. And when I said they were bought and paid for, I meant the Republican establishment, not the Democratic establishment. Now you have Reid Hoffman, the person who's effectively George Soros Jr., funding lawsuits across this country against Donald Trump to keep him off the ballot, funding left-wing causes. We discovered this week that he is one of Nikki Haley's largest supporters. Larry Fink, the king of the woke industrial complex, the ESG movement, the CEO of BlackRock, the most powerful company in the world, now supporting Nikki Haley. And to say that doesn't affect her is false, because it's after that meeting later that day that she says that every American needs to be doxxed by having their ID, their government-issued ID, tied to what they say on the internet. So I think that this is far more corrupt than I even imagined when I entered politics, but I will say this. It is going to take a leader from the outside, with fresh legs, from the next generation to unite this country. Not the broken politicians who are puppets of the puppet masters, but the actual people in this country. Thomas Jefferson was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. I think it's going to take somebody whose best days in life are still ahead to see a country whose best days are ahead of itself. And I think I can reach that next generation better than anybody else in this race. Thank you.
No, I'm going to try to talk about this in a measured way because I really hate Vivek Ramaswamy. I know. That's a strong word. I don't actually hate anyone. Hate's toxic. Don't hate people. But if I did have a hate list, Vivek Ramaswamy would be on the top of that list. He is infuriating because he's so fake, but he talks like he's real. He's the most authentically inauthentic person in politics. He's like a lying used car salesman, but he can kind of trick you into thinking he's being sincere because he'll say certain things that are true and then pepper them with lies. What just happened with Nikki Haley was the perfect example of that. So he points out she was broke when she left the UN, which was true, and that she got on the board of Boeing and then all of a sudden started making all this money as a military contractor, giving speeches to corporations. Those things are true. But what he does is he'll say something that is true, and then his answer to that will either be fascistic or he'll just lie right after. He like weaves lies into true statements. And so it can be confusing for the average person who doesn't know how actually full of shit he is. This motherfucker made his fortune scamming people with his bullshit pharmaceutical company. And then he's out here talking about how other people are corrupt. Like, come on. And they're arguing about the Don't Say Gay bill. Okay, please understand, you guys, that when they say that minors are having all this surgery and stuff, they're lying. It is not legal to have any surgery if you're a minor unless you have parental consent, which is very rare anyhow. In fact, per capita, more minors who are like cis women have nose jobs and breast implants than people who have trans-affirming care. So why is that allowed? If a 16-year-old girl who has like a negative A cup and wants a D cup because that is gender affirming to her, we let her have that surgery with parental consent. Why is trans-affirming care any different? It's not. They just don't want trans people to exist. And that's what the Don't Say Gay bill is about. They don't want for children to talk about gender identity, even though we do teach children gender identity in schools. We just teach them how to be cis. When they say this shouldn't be taught in school, this should be up to the parents, they don't mean it, because they do teach children how to be a certain gender in school. It's been like that forever. The difference in what they want is they just don't want children who are queer or trans to be able to talk about it or see themselves reflected at all, or discussed, or even being able to tell their teachers. And it's so damaging. I spent so many years, not that like I went to public school consistently ever, but I spent so many years being so upset and confused and ashamed. I wish that somebody would have come to me and told me that it was okay that I felt like that I wasn't a weirdo. And I wish that I would have seen myself as a non-binary person reflected. I do think it's important that we teach children that. It would have saved me a lot of anxiety, honestly. These fascists are going to talk about this more as the debate goes on, but let's go on to the next clip.
Social media companies need to show us their algorithms. I also said there are millions of bots on social media right now. They're foreign, they're Chinese, they're Iranian. I will always fight for freedom of speech for Americans. We do not need freedom of speech for Russians and Iranians and Hamas. We need social media companies to go and fight back on.
Roll the tape. She said, I want your name. And that was going to be one of the first things she did in office. And then she got real serious blowback, and understandably so, because it'd be a massive expansion of government.
Actually,
we have anonymous speech. The Federalist Papers were written with anonymous writers. Jay Madison and Hamilton, they went under pupilless. It's something that's important, and especially given how conservatives have been attacked and they've lost jobs and they've been canceled. You know the regime would use that to weaponize that against our own people.
Okay, so that's critical because he actually went and tried to push a law that would stop anonymous people from talking to the press, and went so far to say bloggers should have to register with the state if they're going to write about elected officials. It was in the money. Check your newspaper. It was absolutely there. I have never said. You come back to later. You're lying. This section's over. Okay. Go to Gracie. Really? Just
Part cracked me up because he doesn't shut the fuck up the entire time. Doesn't shut the fuck up. When it's not his turn, he talks. When he's already responded, he tries to respond to his own responses. He interrupts so many times. He's so embarrassed. Moving on. He's like, oh, what? He does this through the whole debate. Just like won't shut the fuck up. He relentlessly attacks Nikki Haley to the point where it's like, okay, bro, like calm down. Like go after someone else. I thought I had rage toward Vivek Ramaswamy though. Whoo, Nikki Haley hates him. Hates him with a passion. And honestly, I don't blame her. For me personally too, I like to keep my eye on right-wing media and watch what they have to say and read what they're talking about and things like that, because none of us can escape the fact that we are all in our own bubbles. We are all in our own silos. When you spend enough time, whether it's on TikTok or any other app, only seeing people that are posting content that you like, you can get a warped view of like what else is happening. No one can escape that. That's why I like to watch right-wing media and talk to Republicans and see what they're doing and read about it, because I know that as somebody who is broadly on the left and reads a lot of left news outlets and watches left media, and my algorithm is a lot of other people that are on the left or left-leaning, I know that sometimes I am not getting the perspective of the right. And I think it's an important perspective just because even if what they're saying is really dangerous, we should know how to counter it. We should understand where they're coming from. They say study your enemies. And just to be clear, when I say enemies, I'm talking about people in positions of power and influence, not Joe Schmo, random guy living somewhere in New Jersey that votes Republican. And that doesn't mean we can't criticize that guy's ideas, but I think it's always important that you don't punch down. We should always be punching up. And for the most part, I don't, but sometimes I have moments where I forget how depraved they are. And then I'll watch something like this and I'm like, yeah, these people want this country to be an authoritarian dictatorship.
It's often very difficult to be the only person on the stage who's telling the truth, and the only person who is taking on what needs to be taken on. I look at my watch now. We're 17 minutes into this debate, and except for your little speech in the beginning, we've had these three acting as if the race is between the four of us. The fifth guy, who doesn't have the guts to show up and stand here, He's the one who, as you just put it, is way ahead in the polls. And yet, I've got these three guys who are all seemingly to compete with, Voldemort. He who shall not be named. They don't want to talk about it. The fact is that when you go and you say the truth about somebody who is a dictator, a bully, who has taken shots at everybody, whether they've given great service or not over time, who dares to disagree with him, then I understand why these three are timid to say anything about it. Maybe it's because they have future aspirations. Maybe those future aspirations are now, or maybe they're 4 years from now. But the fact of the matter is, the truth needs to be told. And for us to go 17 minutes without discussing the guy who has all those gaudy numbers you talked about is ridiculous. I'm in this race because the truth needs to be spoken. He is unfit. This is a guy who just said this past week that he wants to use the Department of Justice to go after his enemies when he gets in there. I mean, the fact of the matter is, he is unfit to be president, and there is no bigger issue in this race, Megan, than Donald Trump, and those numbers prove it.
As I say all the time, people can be totally wrong or have bad intentions, but still say things that are obvious that are true. And obviously, he's Johnny come lately because he didn't say anything about Trump. His entire administration helped him with debate prep in 2020. Donald Trump gave him COVID, and he ended up in the ICU. That's how much Donald Trump respects him. And Chris Christie didn't even speak out against him until after the coup attempt on January 6th. I guess what I'm saying is, yes, he's full of shit too, but that doesn't change the fact that what he's saying there is true. Donald Trump is unfit to be president, and they're all afraid to say anything for the exact reasons that Chris Christie said. They're afraid of him, and they also don't want to piss off his base. They're hoping that eventually when Donald Trump goes away, that they can take his support. It really shows the absurdity of it though, because as Chris Christie said, they're 17 minutes into this debate and none of them want to talk about him. How are you going to ignore the fact that he's the front runner and he's beating all of you guys by over 40 points, but you guys don't want to name check him? Which is why Ron DeSantis's cosplay as a badass and I'm a truth teller and I'll take on the fight and I'll take on this person is so fucking pathetic. His whole oh, you need a fighter in there. I'm the one who gets it done. I'll take him on. Is so insincere, and it falls apart the second Donald Trump is brought up. He shrinks away and doesn't want to talk about it.
8 Americans have been held hostage in the tunnels beneath Gaza for 60 days now. American troops and warships in the Middle East are under attack. How far would you go as president to secure the release of those 8 American hostages? And would it include sending American forces into combat?
We have to look out for our people. When they're hostages, commander-in-chief, you have to do whatever you can to get them done. But the overall issue with this is this administration is trying to hobble Israel from being able to defend itself. They have a right to eliminate Hamas and win a total and complete victory so that they never have to deal with this again. Hamas wants nothing less than a second Holocaust. They would wipe off every single Jew off the map. They would destroy the state of Israel if we could. Joe Biden will say they support Israel, and then they do nothing but try to kneecap them every step of the way. You should not try to direct their war effort. We should work together with them so that they can bring Hamas to heel. Look, I served in Iraq back in the day. I'm the only one running for president that served in the military. I understand that part of the world. It's not the best part of the world. We do have troops there that Biden is leaving basically as sitting ducks, and you have the Iranians that are attacking these troops, and he's responding with basically pinpricks. If you harm an American service member, you're going to have hell to pay when I'm president. We are not going to let our troops be sitting ducks. We also need to look at what's the underlying problem here. Iran. Biden is doing nothing to bring Iran to account. You got to turn the screws on them. Yes. Don't let them have any oil.
War with Iran.
They send to Hamas, they send to Hezbollah, and they foment jihad throughout the Middle East. So Biden has empowered Iran just like he's empowered other adversaries. We stand with Israel. They're our best ally in the Middle East. We have a unique relationship with them, and you will see a strong relationship when I'm the president of the United States.
This is the problem with the first three debates. Ron gets asked a question, and he doesn't answer it. Your question was very specific. You said, would you send American troops as commander-in-chief? And he went on to this minute 30-second hosanna about his knowledge of the military and what we need to do, and didn't answer your question. Look, when you're president of the United States, you're not going to have a choice whether to answer that question or not. Your generals, your secretary of defense, your secretary of state, your national security advisor are going to present plans to you. They're going to look at you and say, do we go or don't we, Mr. President? And you can't give a 90-second speech about your military service.
So would you send American troops into rescue the hostages?
Absolutely. If they had a plan which showed me that we could get them out safely, you're damn right I'd send the American army in there to get our people home and get them home now. And I'll answer that question directly.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there because they said so many psychotic things, but I think it's really important to pay attention to. How about the IDF doesn't give a fuck about the hostages? How about Netanyahu doesn't give a fuck about the hostages? It's about to get a lot more deranged because as we all know, despite the fact that Biden has been awful on this and done everything Israel wants him to do, you would think that Biden was a member of Hamas the way that they talk about him. They're such depraved lunatics. They talk about it like Biden is calling for the destruction of Israel. Like they live in an alternate universe. Biden has been so hawkish on this, and yet they continue to call him weak. They're like, oh, he's ceding ground to the radical left. He's weak on Israel. Are you fucking kidding me? I don't know how much more deranged the Biden administration could be on the war against Gaza, and yet the way they talk about it, you think that Biden was calling for the destruction of Israel. Seriously, that's how fucking crazy it is. It's never right-wing enough for them. Never bloodthirsty enough. Now they're talking about American troops going to Israel. Oh, get the fuck out of here.
The Hamas terror attack left dozens of Americans dead and was the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Why wouldn't it be a good thing to finish Hamas?
Finish them was purposefully vague in a discussion that included Iran, which is what I objected to. And I think it's, as U.S. president, you have to be responsible. What happened to Israel was dead wrong. What Hamas did was medieval. It was subhuman. It was immoral. And we have to call that out for what it is on October 7th. But to say that that was an attack on America fails a basic test. I mean, if you can't tell the difference between where Israel is and the U.S. is on a map, I can have my 3-year-old son show you the difference. That is irresponsible because it has major consequences, because that doesn't leave room for what actually is an attack on America. So I believe I have the strongest pro-Israel position actually on the stage, even though it's a little bit different than the standard GOP talking points. And it is this. The founding vision of Israel, David David Ben-Gurion, the George Washington figure of Israel, what did he believe? He believed that we don't want, as Israel, to depend on the fleeting sympathies of the West and have our hands tied. I think Israel has an absolute right to defend itself to the fullest, without the U.S., the UN, or the EU, or anybody else second-guessing their decisions, as the Biden administration, guess what, is now starting to do.
Okay, then give me my taxes back.
And it keeps the actual lines of accountability clear. If you look at this terrorist attack and the number of Americans, this would be one of the top 10 terrorist attacks in American history. So our own people were killed in that attack, and I think it's absolutely appropriate to point that out and to say that we're in this together, and we are going to work with Israel so that these people are brought to justice. I agree with that.
Starting with Ron DeSantis. First, he evades the question. As Chris Christie pointed out, he doesn't want to answer because he agrees that we should send American troops to Israel. And then he just goes on this diatribe of lies, or as Chris Christie put it, a hosanna, which I haven't heard anybody use that word since like church, so that was fun. We all know how awful the Biden administration has been through this entire thing. And yet, if you didn't know anything about politics, if you were just a casual observer and you watch this, you wouldn't know that because of the amount that they lie and how bloodthirsty they are. He says that Biden is trying to hobble Israel from defending itself, and that the tepid calls for Netanyahu to use restraint are somehow kneecapping them. It is amazing how psychotic these people are. That you could look at the way the Biden administration is handling this and then watch them say he's kneecapping them. He's trying to hobble them from defending themselves. It's truly terrifying to let it sink in that the leaders in this country and the influential people in this country can look at the atrocious handling of the genocide in Gaza by the Biden administration and go with a straight face, Biden's not doing enough. Biden's weak. The Biden administration is kneecapping Israel. What fucking planet are you on?
Iran is on the threshold of becoming a nuclear state. The Wall Street Journal reported that Iranian military leaders gave the green light for Hamas's attack on Israel. You said in last month's debate that, by contrast to the Biden administration's approach to Iran, you would, quote, punch them once and punch them hard. Were you saying that it's time to bomb Iran? No, I was not saying it's time to bomb Iran, but I will tell you, I dealt with Iran every day when I was at the United Nations, and they only respond to strength. What they don't respond to is when you weaken the sanctions like they did on Iran that allowed China to send them billions to fill their proxies. What they don't respond to is when you give $6 billion for 5 hostages. That only makes them want more hostages. What they don't respond to is when they do 140 strikes on our men and women in Syria and Iraq, and we do nothing but just some small shots back. You got to punch them hard, and let them know that. That's the only way they're going to respond. So the way you do that is you go after their infrastructure in Syria and Iraq where they're hitting our soldiers. That's what you do, and then that's when they'll back off. The problem is you have to see that all of these are related. If you look at the fact, Russia was losing that war with Ukraine. Putin had hit rock bottom. They had raised the draft age to 65. He was getting drones and missiles, drones from Iran, missiles from North Korea. And so what happened? When he hit rock bottom, all of a sudden, his other friend, Iran, Hamas goes and invades Israel and butchers those people on Putin's birthday. There is no one happier right now than Putin because all of the attention America had on Ukraine suddenly went to Israel. And that's what they were hoping is going to happen. We need to make sure that we have full clarity that there is a reason, again, that Taiwanese want to help Ukrainians because they know if Ukraine wins, China won't invade Taiwan. There's a reason the Ukrainians want to help Israelis because they know that if Iran wins, Russia wins. These are all connected. But what wins all of that is a strong America, not a weak America. And that's what Joe Biden's given us.
I want everybody at home to know that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and makes $8 million after has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces that she wants to actually fight for. And there's a couple of countries right there. The owners right there that are paying off the fight.
Let me just say something here. You know, his reasonable peace deal in Ukraine, he made it clear. Give them all the land they've already stolen. Promise Putin you'll never put Ukraine in Russia, and then trust Putin not to have a relationship with China. Let me tell you something. That's no reasonable. Yes, it's exactly what you said. You do this at every debate. You say, no, don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. Okay? You say this. You do this. You do this at every debate. You go out on the stump and you say something. All of us see it on video. We confront you on the debate stage. You say you didn't say it, and then you back away. And I want to say, I'm not done yet. This is the fourth debate that you would be voted in the first 20 minutes as the most obnoxious blowhard in America. So shut up for I want to say something else. We're now 25 minutes into this debate, and he has insulted Nikki Haley's basic intelligence. Not her positions, her basic intelligence. She doesn't know regions. She wouldn't be able to find something on a map that his 3-year-old could find. Look, if you want to disagree on issues, that's fine. And Nikki and I disagree on some issues. But I'll tell you this, I've known her for 12 years, which is longer than he's even started to vote in a Republican primary. And while we disagree about some issues and we disagree about who should be president of the United States, what we don't disagree on is this is a smart, accomplished woman. You should stop insulting. So I take this. So first of all, I think we just learned something from Chris Christie. We learned 3 things. We learned 3 things right there. First of all, Chris Christie also doesn't know what provinces in eastern Ukraine he actually wants to fight for. Chris, your version of foreign policy experience was closing a bridge from New Jersey to New York. So do everybody a favor, just walk yourself off that stage, enjoy a nice meal, and get the hell out of this place. When it comes to Nikki, I think if you're going to actually send your sons and daughters to go die in somebody else's war, excuse me, Chris, I'm speaking, and I'm not done yet. I haven't heard the time when you weren't going to be done. So listen up to this.
I don't know if you caught that at the end, but he said to Chris Christie, go off the stage and enjoy a nice meal. I'm so fucking tired of that. You want to talk about elitist? The jokes about Chris Christie being fat are so fucking tired. They're so fucking old. Like, come up. There is a lot to criticize Chris Christie on. Also, I don't want to hear comments like that from Vivek Ramaswamy with his snow cone hair. He doesn't have any room to be talking about how someone's gross or implying that because listen, I don't don't know if you guys could see it because I did speed up the clips a lot, but every interview that he does, he has spittle collecting around his mouth. You know that shit that you get when you're not drinking enough water or you don't wipe your mouth and so spit kind of closes and opens like a piece of gum as you're talking? It's disgusting. Every interview that I watch with this clown, that happens at some point in the interview. So he really shouldn't be talking about Chris Christie like he's gross. I swear, these people can never write a new joke. I saw a bunch of Republicans, not just him, being like, he said Donald Trump wasn't fit to be president. Fit, get it? Get it? Because he's not fit? Meh. These people literally get all their jokes from the 90s. All of them. The fact that these troglodytes can't come up with any other insult to Chris Christie besides "you're fat" is indicative of how vapid all of them are. Chris Christie has said before, especially when Trump was spreading those memes making fun of his weight, that like a lot of Americans struggle with their weight, which is true. And the implication, not even just implication, they've come out and said it, is that he is not competent to do the job because he's fat, which is so fucking disgusting. They have said that he wasn't competent, that he doesn't have any self-control. It's like, Chris Christie may be a terrible neocon, but he's not stupid. And the fat phobia that they engage in is just fucking vile. Get a new joke. And stop making me defend Chris Christie. The Biden administration has already given them a blank check. So what else do you want? What else do you want? Oh, you want troops on the ground, and you want them to do whatever they want without consequence. And they want war with Iran, which becomes clear through every single answer that they have. They just want war with Iran so bad. That is why they lie about the hostage negotiations with Iran. You'll hear Republicans say a lot, oh, we printed all this money and gave Iran bags of cash. It was their money. Sanctions were lifted. It's the reason why they keep saying Iran's enriching uranium, because they just want an excuse to go to war with Iran. And then they go to Vivek Ramaswamy and he does the same shit that I keep saying he does. He'll say something that's true and then he'll follow that up with something ridiculous. So when he called her out on that, yeah, that's true, because that type of language is just an excuse to drag us into a war. They want us to personalize it. Like, oh, well, this is a war on us, so we should send American troops there. But then he follows it up with the ridiculous notion of we should let Israel do whatever they want. They shouldn't have to depend on the fleeting sympathies of the West. They have the right to defend themselves without the US or the UN second-guessing their decision, claiming that their hands are tied. Okay, is Israel the 51st state and I just didn't know? I mean, I didn't really go to school, so maybe I missed that, but I didn't realize that Israel was a part of the US. The way that the Israeli government has control over our politicians, you would think that it was a part of it. These people care more about Israel than they do about their own states. And why do they get to do whatever they want? No other country just gets to do whatever they want without America freaking out. But when it comes to Israel, they're like, let them do whatever they want. They should be able to do whatever they want without the West getting involved and trying to hobble them. Really then? I want my taxes back. This bizarre notion that even though we prop up Israel's military, like they wouldn't be able to do any fucking thing that they do without us, that they should be able to do whatever they want, commit any war crimes that they want, and we as Americans should shut up because it's not our business and they've got a right to defend themselves. Okay, except for it is our business. It is our business because we fucking pay for it. And I love that notion too because we make everything our business. Our country loves to put our fucking noses in where it doesn't belong all over the world. And yet when it comes to Israel, all of a sudden we need to stay out of it, okay? Except for our wallets. Our wallets need to stay in it. Regardless of how they dress it up or the perceived differences, they're all the same puppets for the Israeli government. As you see, Ron DeSantis tries to connect them, like make them intertwined, like Americans got killed in that attack, so Americans need to get involved because it was an attack on us. More warmongering, more weapons of mass destruction vibes. So American nationals were killed and taken hostage in that attack. So were a lot of other foreign nationals. So does that mean they should all go to war too? Just think about how fucking crazy that is. A lot of foreign nationals were killed and taken hostage on October 7th. There were French nationals, there were Australian nationals, German nationals. There were just a bunch of Thai nationals that got released as a part of the hostage deal. There were people from all over the world that got killed there. So from that standard, are they all supposed to get together and join the war? You guys, this is crazy. The way they lie about Biden's approach on Iran it is similar to the way they lie about it on Israel. So Biden has been super hawkish on Iran, but you would think that he wasn't based on what they're saying. The moderator lies there because she says that there was proof in reporting that Iran was behind the Hamas attack. The Wall Street Journal reported that. It got fact-checked later that there was no evidence for that claim. Further, their real plan is really just bomb Iran. And that's why they lie and claim that Biden has been so soft on Iran. No, he has not. Biden didn't even rejoin the Iran deal. Understand, these motherfuckers ripped up the Iran deal as soon as Trump got in office because they wanted to get the gears rolling for war. They claim they're so worried about Iran developing a nuclear weapon, yet Iran was in compliance with the deal. There were independent checkers that were going in to verify that Iran was not enriching uranium. So that deal was going well, and it was working, and yet the Republicans went in and ripped it up on day one because they didn't want it to work. He says that they're all on board with a peace deal in Ukraine. No, they're not. Ukrainians have been being massacred day by day by day, and they don't give a fuck because they support Putin. What they want is for Putin to be able to keep what he's taken. And don't misunderstand me. I think there needs to be peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. That shit is not getting better. May have been out of the news cycle for a while and people have largely forgotten and moved on, but it's still going on. And Putin is a lunatic and an imperialist dictator who is not going to stop with Ukraine. That is the only reason why the United States is backing Ukraine so hard, okay? It's not because they give a fuck about democracy. It's not because they really care about the Ukrainian people getting killed. They don't. They only care insofar as they don't want Putin to continue to encroach on more and more territory of Eastern Europe. Because last time that happened was during the Holocaust. But they don't want to confront the complexities of what's happening in Ukraine. They don't want to try to negotiate a peace deal. They just want bombing, more war, more weapons. Doesn't matter how many Ukrainians get killed. They're gonna take out Putin. It is insane and unrealistic as the claim that you're going to get rid of Hamas. You're not just gonna take out Putin. What Chris Christie was saying there about Vivek is absolutely true. I mean, he's so full of shit, but you can barely hear him because Vivek can't not interrupt. Every time somebody talks, he talks over them. And yes, I don't want to get too into the identity politics of the Yas queening, you're attacking her because she's a woman shit, because I do think that regardless of her gender, politicians should be held to account for their actions. They shouldn't be able to use their identity as an excuse to do horrid shit. However, with that being said, it is also true that he is relentlessly going after her, and he does target her in a pretty sexist way that he wouldn't with the other guys. Here's the thing, Nikki Haley is a warmonger. She actually does understand foreign policy. It's just horrible. Her opinions, her views are horrible. But that doesn't mean she doesn't understand them. And it is sexist that he's talking to her like she's stupid and then says my 3-year-old son would be better at pointing it out on a map. As Chris Christie pointed out accurately, bro, you didn't even vote. This motherfucker has so much to say. He didn't even vote until a few years ago.
The pledge to send the military to the southern border on day one of your administration with orders to shoot, quote, stone cold dead, anyone illegally entering with a backpack that you believe contains fentanyl.
Psychotic.
Critics have called this a shoot first, ask questions later policy that would amount to extrajudicial killing. You are a former military lawyer. Why do you think this idea of yours would be legal?
The drug cartels are invading our country, and they are killing our citizens by the tens of thousands every year. We had a situation in Florida. There was an 18-month-old baby that was crawling on the floor of an Airbnb rental.
We don't care about your anecdotes.
And the baby died. Is this acceptable in this country? I know the elites in D.C., they don't care. They don't care that fentanyl's ravaging your community. They don't care that illegal aliens are ravaging our community and overwhelming our community. The commander-in-chief not only has a right, you have a responsibility to fight back against these people.
And does that mean shooting first?
It means you're gonna categorize them as foreign terrorist organizations, and we will identify just like we would anywhere. When I was in Iraq, the Al-Qaeda wasn't wearing a uniform. You'd see anyone walking down the street, they all had man dresses on. You didn't know if someone had a bomb, an IED attached or not. And so you had to make a judgment based on intelligence, based on positive identification. But we're gonna be able to get the intelligence on these cartel people. Here's the thing. If we had a wall across the southern border, which I support, this would not have happened. We need to build a wall across the southern border. I'll get it done, and Mexico's supposed to pay for it. Remember, here's how you do that. I'm gonna have fees on remittances from foreign workers when they send the money back to foreign countries. We're gonna tax it, and we're gonna build a wall with that. So yes, you should have had that, but we don't have it. I'm gonna build it, but we have to lean in on this problem. I am not gonna sit there and allow mothers to lose more kids because of fentanyl overdose. I am not gonna sit there and let sex trafficking go unabated or human trafficking go unabated. There's gonna be a new sheriff in town, and these drug cartels better buckle up.
New sheriff in town.
All of the 7 or 8 million illegals that have come under Biden's watch absolutely have to go back. We have to stop the incentive of what's bringing them over here in the first place. Biden just gave temporary protective status to 500,000 Venezuelans. That's 500,000 social security cards. That's 500,000
I thought you were worried about that.
The first thing they do is pick up the phone and say, we came over, come on over. And that's what sends more. You have to go and deport these people so they know it can't happen again. For those that have been here longer than that, we've got to start start seeing who is it, how long have they been here, have they been vetted, have they paid taxes, have they been working, and figure out who else is out there. But what I know is my parents came here legally. They put in the time, they put in the price. They are offended by those that are coming illegally. We can't let them skip the line. But when you talk about fentanyl like you did before, let's look at something else. Yes, I think we should send special operations over and take out the cartels. I think we should do a remain in Mexico policy so they never step foot in U.S. soil in the first place. But look at where fentanyl came from. Let's go to the heart of the matter. It came from China. That's why we need to end all normal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans with fentanyl. I promise you, they need our economy. They will immediately stop that. But this is where Trump went wrong. Trump was good on trade, but that's all he was with China. Because here he allowed fentanyl to continue to come over. He continued to allow them to he would give them technology that would build up their military and hurt us. He allowed the Chinese infiltration for them to buy up farmland, to put money in our universities, and to continue to do things that were harmful for America. We now have a spy base in Cuba and police stations, and Trump didn't do anything about it.
All these people do is fearmonger, and they use specific words so that they can demonize and warmonger about other countries. She says infiltrate, that China's infiltrating. No one's infiltrating. These are deals that are made by American corporations with the Chinese government and the American government. They act like all this stuff is happening to us, but we live in an oligarchy, a plutocracy, a corporatocracy, and all these things happening, like China buying up farmland across the country or real estate, or the fact that all of our products are made in China. None of those things happen to us. They happened because of policy. They happened because American corporations wanted them to happen. They happened because of trade deals that the United States made with these countries.
Fentanyl has killed more than 75,000 Americans, 1,000 of them right here in Alabama. You have vowed to use the military to, quote, annihilate drug labs inside Mexico, something the president of Mexico said would be a hostile act. But fentanyl can easily be made anywhere, and labs that are shut down can easily and quickly be replaced. Are your tough enforcement policies offering false hope to a country wracked by addiction?
To the contrary, I don't think it's going to have to come to that if we deal with the actual demand side problem that we also have in this country. I mean, the easy part is talking about how we're going to use our military to secure the border. I will, and I believe that everybody else wants to do the same thing. But the harder part is dealing with the crisis of purpose and meaning, the mental health epidemic raging across this country like wildfire. And there's a reason why after the opioid crisis you see fentanyl. And even after we get fentanyl, and we're going to be sure to make sure we do it, this one is worse for many reasons. They're illegally lacing it into pharmaceuticals, so it's more dangerous. But we're deluding ourselves. The real false promise here is thinking that we're going to have dealt with that underlying mental health epidemic in this country by just dealing with the demand side of it. But I want to get back to this issue of the root cause, because a lot of these are coming from labs in Wuhan, China, of all places. Drug materials that are going to the Mexican drug cartels that they're pumping across that southern border like a modern opium war. I think it's going to take a U.S. president that's going to have a very different conversation with Xi Jinping than what Joe Biden just had in California. I will tell Xi Jinping, you will not only not buy land in this country or donate to universities in this country. U.S. businesses won't expand into the Chinese market until they're playing by the same set of rules. And the same country that's putting fentanyl into illegal pharmaceuticals in Mexico, it's no coincidence, is the exact same country that also unleashed hell on the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have to hold them accountable with every financial lever that we have available. And that is what it actually means to stand with a spine. And you mark my words, if we're willing to stand with a spine, China will absolutely have to fold because they're in a tougher spot than we are. And then we're back to playing by the same set of rules.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Thank you.
There Vivek goes again, taking an issue that is real, like the opioid crisis and the fentanyl crisis, and then his answer to that is always fascism. We have a problem with opioids and fentanyl in this country, so let's invade Mexico. And then he's like, oh, we have to deal with the supply side, the mental health crisis. And then you'll notice he doesn't say anything about dealing with actual mental health issues. He goes on some stupid diatribe, or Hosanna in the words of Chris Christie, on how we don't have American unity anymore, and we don't have pride, and we need to do this and that, rather than saying, hey, maybe we should fund addiction treatment centers and mental health care. The crisis of purpose and meaning. Well, when you organize your society around the very, very few at the very top having everything and corporations being more important than human beings, that tends to happen. These people have purposely implemented policies over decades and decades that have made it so that human beings in this country don't have shit and are subject to the whims of big corporations. And then they turn around and go, we have a crisis of purpose and meaning. And they're not going to do anything about that. They're like, oh, we're going to get tough on Xi. Okay, except for no, you're not. Because you motherfuckers always bow to whoever is going to give you money. And the United States is intertwined with China, our economies. That is not changing anytime soon. And these motherfuckers really don't want it to change because they've got business there. This is just more pandering. It's pretend tough talk because they know that their radical base likes strongmen and dictators. And it's more ways to try to create xenophobia and fear and hatred toward the Chinese.
Homeownership has always been part of the American dream, but it's increasingly out of reach for younger Americans. This year, mortgage rates reached 30-year highs. Home prices have risen $190,000 over the past decade. Is this a free market at work? Make sure that we really stop paying down this debt. Make sure that we stop the borrowing, stop the spending. I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels, because our kids are not going to forgive us for all the spending that happened. And as much as everybody wants to talk about how Donald Trump had a good economy, $9 trillion in debt he did just in 4 years. And we're all paying the price of that, including those mortgage prices.
Oh, wow. What a surprise. Her answer to the American dream being non-existent and people not being able to afford houses is deregulation. Literally, they're using the same fucking playbook from zombie Reaganism that they haven't moved on from in 40 years. They want to ignore the hedge funds. They want to ignore private equity buying up houses all across the country so that they they can be permanent landlords to people. They want to ignore the Fed being out of control and just raising interest rates whenever they want. They want to ignore the student debt crisis and that being the reason why a lot of people can't afford houses. They want to ignore low wages. They want to ignore everything that would actually address the housing crisis because their answer to everything is tax cuts for the rich corporations and deregulation. Things that they've been doing for over 40 years that have done nothing except for massively exacerbate income inequality. And government spending and printing money, like all of this is just a callback to fucking Paul Ryan. They love to bring up all the spending that Democrats do, but they want to really ignore. They just don't want you to remember that Donald Trump racked up $9 trillion worth of debt. $2 trillion of that, cutting taxes for the rich and corporations. And one of the many things that's maddening to me about this is how people have the memory of a goldfish. Recent polls have showed that people think that the economy was better under Trump. This literally happens every time we have an election. A Republican gets in office, they cut taxes for the rich and corporations, they rack up a ton of debt, they deregulate, the economy crashes, then a Democrat gets elected because people are understandably mad. The Democrat spends half their term cleaning up the fucking mess the GOP created. And then people forget that it was the GOP that created the mess in the first place, and they blame the financial situation on the Democrat and then vote for Republican again. Rinse and fucking repeat. This pattern has literally been happening since Reagan, and it's happening again right now. Biden inherited a fucking horrible economy because Donald Trump ran it into the ground, and now unemployment is the lowest it's been since the 1960s. The economy is recovering. Wages are finally going up for the first time in 40 years. They love to talk about unemployment and how low it was under Trump. It's been even lower under Biden. People seem to forget about the pandemic. Like, the fucking way that he handled the pandemic. And then, of course, the Democrats come in and they've got to clean that up. And the interest rates and inflation are finally starting to go down. And a lot of the reason they love to blame on government spending that inflation is high was because of the fucking pandemic and the supply chain issue. And corporate price gouging. They never want to talk about that. Corporate price gouging that companies are still engaging in is the reason why inflation remains high. And I'm not saying that there's not still a ton of issues with the economy, but that is a structural issue. What I'm saying makes me insane is this fucking merry-go-round that we always go on. We do this okie doke every fucking 4 years, where suddenly everyone has amnesia and they forget how awful the Republicans actually are on the economy, and then they go, it's the Democrats' fault that the economy is not recovering fast enough, even though the Democrat inherited a fucking shit show that the Republicans left for them to sweep up, and want to ignore the fact that jobs did bounce back, and we've had job growth every single quarter, despite the fact that every Republican and every mainstream media pundit on the right has been screaming that a recession was coming. It was nigh. It was here. The recession was here. They've been fear-mongering about that over and over and over again. But there hasn't been a recession. And again, I'm not saying that shit's not out of control economically. I'm not saying that people aren't struggling. I'm fucking struggling. My husband's fucking struggling. So this is not a defense of the way that our economy is structured, but it is to say that the reality of how our economy is functioning and how it's been recovering since the pandemic is a hell of a lot better than it was if any of these plutocrats were in office. The economy has recovered remarkably since the pandemic, a once-in-a-century catastrophe, in a much faster way than it did when Obama came in office. Why? Because Obama was surrounded by a bunch of right-wing fucking economists like Larry Summers who encouraged him and told him to go really light on the spending, not to help Americans. And what happened? It took years for us to recover from 2008. The spending that the Biden administration did when they first came in office actually fucking saved the economy. And all the economists and right-wing pundits were like, no, you can't do that. That's going to cause a recession and job losses. What happened? It didn't. That's not going to stop them from continuing to lie about it, just like they fucking lie on oil drilling.
Inflation tops the worries of American voters. 61% say they're very concerned, and the working class is hardest hit. Economists say this was fueled by a glut of federal spending. The Biden administration has added $6 trillion to the national debt so far, but President Trump wasn't exactly a penny pincher. His administration added $7.8 trillion. Do Republicans, including President Trump, share the blame for inflation? And what concrete steps would President DeSantis take to help Americans make ends meet?
The borrowing, printing, and spending of money was both parties in Washington, D.C. That's just a fact. These Republicans in Washington have spent. It's driven your prices higher, and it's driven your interest rates to the point where you can't afford. I met a young fella in Iowa. He had graduated college a couple years ago, and he's like, Governor, I don't have a chance. I'm gainfully employed. He's like, I have no chance to afford a home and start a family. down. We're going to get the interest rates down. We are going to reduce spending. We willing to veto, and I vetoed a lot as governor of Florida, and we'll do that. We're also going to open up all of our domestic energy for production, lower your gas prices, lower the price of fuel. That's going to help the economy and also help jobs, and we'll do it. But another thing that's burdening young people are these student loans. Now, I don't support having a truck driver having to pay a student loan for someone that got a degree in gender studies. That is wrong. We should not have taxpayers do that.
Ron DeSantis is such a piece of shit. They have like two jokes, the pronoun joke and the we don't want to pay for your degree in gender studies. That is a lie, of course. No one who is just some working class person is paying for somebody's student loan. These were government loans for people who financially qualified for them because the Democrats decided that they were just going to means test them, even though they shouldn't have. They did it to please the GOP. But again, it doesn't matter if you try to please them. They don't fucking care about the truth. They're going to lie about it anyway. We cancel debt for people all the time, and canceling student loan debt would actually help the economy. That's a fact. And then we get to the lie of the oil drilling. Oh man. This one is a real doozy. And I hear it all the fucking time. All the fucking time. The war on energy. We're not energy independent. Biden's war on drilling. Here's the inconvenient fucking truth for all you Trump simps. The United States is drilling more and exporting more oil than anyone has in the fucking history of the country. We are now drilling more than Saudi Arabia. And the reason why you don't hear that is because it's inconvenient for the Democrats as well. Democrats know that their base cares about climate change. So it's inconvenient to tell them, actually, Biden's been approving a lot of permits. Biden's been allowing a lot of oil drilling. Biden has been allowing corporations to export oil in record numbers. Now remember, when they say we're going to be energy independent, they mean corporations. Like, understand this, guys. Never do they mean anything for you. For the regular average American, they never mean you. When they say we, they mean on behalf of the big corporations. Because what these corporations do is they drill and they pocket the profits and they sell abroad and pocket those profits, and then they sell it back to you, the Americans. So you're really not benefiting at all. It's always about power, the 1%, and the fucking corporation. But this is where we have to remember, actually, that propaganda works. People don't actually fucking read things. They listen to propaganda. And the GOP and their proxies in right-wing fascist media have successfully convinced people, even some liberals, that we're not energy independent, that we're not drilling enough, that there's a war on oil, when in fact, drilling in this country right now under Biden is at record levels. It is amazing how they are able to get away with these lies. Because unfortunately, people don't fact check shit. They see something on Instagram, they see something on TikTok, they hear it on right-wing media and they go, oh, right, yeah, they're saying there's a war on oil. I guess there is.
Quote, except for day one, promising to seal the southern border. He has also pledged to begin the largest deportation operation in American history, saying that migrants are, quote, poisoning the blood of our country. He has pledged to round up and expel an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. What do you make of that plan?
I think it's completely predictable. I mean, look, he's made it very clear. There's no mystery to what he wants to do. He started off his campaign by saying, I am your retribution. 8 years ago, he said, I'm your voice. This is an angry, bitter man who now wants to be back as president because he wants to exact retribution on anyone who has disagreed with him, anyone who has tried to hold him to account for his own conduct, and every one of these policies that he's talking about are about pursuing a plan of retribution. And yet, at the first debate, my three colleagues on the stage, when asked if he would be convicted of federal felonies, would they still support him, raise their hand, looked into the camera, and let everybody know that they would still support him, even if convicted of federal felonies. Federal felonies, by the way. Federal felonies which involve our election process. Federal felonies which involve the most sensitive of our governmental secrets. Federal felonies where he instructed others to commit crimes. Folks who are now agreeing to go to jail because of what they did in his name. So do I think he was kidding when he said he was a dictator? All you have to do is look at the history. And that's why failing to speak out against him, making excuses for him, pretending that somehow he's a victim, empowers him. You want to know why those poll numbers are where they are? Because folks like these three guys on the stage make it seem like his conduct is acceptable. Let me make it clear. His conduct is unacceptable. He's unfit. And be careful of what you're going to get. If you ever got another Donald Trump term, he's letting you know, I am your retribution. He will only be, Elizabeth, he will only be his own retribution. He doesn't care for the American people. It's Donald Trump first.
Thank you. He is making a big deal about what he said about some of these comments. I would just remind people, that is not how he governed. He didn't even fire Dr. Fauci. He didn't fire Christopher Wray. He didn't clean up the swamp. He said he was going to drain it. He did not drain it. He said he was going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. We don't have the wall. He did say in 2016 he'd have the largest deportation program in history. He deported less than Barack Obama did when Barack Obama was president. So some of these policies he ran on in 16, I was cheering him on then, but he didn't deliver it. Here's what I can promise people. 100% of the things I promised as governor, I delivered on those promises. I beat the left.
So what Chris Christie said there was absolutely true. He was asked about Trump's comments saying that he would be a dictator only on day one. Now, I'm amazed that this wasn't a bigger story, but I guess people just don't believe him, or people forget about how he was in office. But he's literally telling us he's going to be a dictator. And how dictators rise is by being enabled by people around them. So when these hacks, as Chris Christie pointed out, refuse to condemn him, they say that they'll vote for him anyway, even if he's convicted in a court of law, and they do apologia for him and ignore ignore his comments about fascism, that's how fascists happen. Let's not forget that Mustache Man was in jail himself before his rise to power. And when he was first getting into power, people did not take him seriously as a threat. This guy is literally saying, yeah, of course I'm going to be a dictator. He had a speech a couple days ago where he was just fawning all over Xi Jinping and talking about how he admires him because he rules his people with an iron fist. And of course, praising Putin, praising Kim Jong-un because he loves dictators, praising Viktor Orban. He admires those people because that's the way he wants to rule the United States. And these people know that. But they don't say anything because they want to stay in his good graces. They're hoping that maybe they can run in 2028, like there will be an election 2028 if Trump wins. Or they think that they'll be in his administration. But what I find amazing about it is they're like, oh my gosh, like people on the left, liberals, the mainstream media, they're just being hysterical. Except for a lot of the things he said he was going to do, he did do. And the only things that he wasn't able to get away with was because there were certain checks and balances in the way of him. And people that stood in his way, people that he will ensure this time around are not there. He's made clear he would fill his cabinet with cronies. In fact, he put out a list of all the fascists that he would put in his administration were he to win. And people were like, oh, he probably doesn't mean it. I think that that's just PR. It's like, does no one remember when he literally put out his list of right-wing authoritarian judges that he was going to put on the Supreme Court? And everyone was like, oh, he's not going to do that. And he literally did. And yes, part of this I feel like is the media's fault because they did get upset over every little single thing that he did, so much so to the point where people just started rolling their eyes. Just because the media cried all the time doesn't mean that there weren't things that he said he was going to do that he did carry out and that he absolutely will carry out again. And they know that. They don't care. Because something that a lot of people are unwilling to confront is it's not just them. A lot of the GOP voters, the base, they're cool with an autocracy. The same people that have never shut the fuck up about the Constitution and freedom and America and have spent decades yelling at people on the left and liberals and saying that they were un-American and they hated the country. The second they thought that it would be expedient to them to trash any type of democracy, they're like, bye. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about freedom. What they care about is power and getting what they want out of it. And if that means a fascist autocrat has to come to power, they're fine with that. And they can always make excuses and explain it away because when you're in a cult, you will always find a reason to explain the unexplainable. I thought of this last night because I started watching Mother God. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It made me think of GOP voters because every single time something that this woman didn't fucking add up or make sense, her cult followers would just be like, it's a part of the plan. The Galactica told her, taking on the sins of the world. They always had a fucking excuse to explain what didn't add up. And these people are no different. A lot of them are trying to rewrite history and say that people who are afraid of the threat that Trump poses are just being hysterical. They want to rewrite history and pretend that Trump didn't do or attempt to do the things that he did. Some of us remember and some of us know the policies that he actually carried out and know that he's a lunatic and a narcissist and would absolutely do it again. People will be like, oh, comparing him to Mustache Man, like that's so over the top. Really? Because he said that immigrants were poisoning the blood of the country. Where have we heard that before? He called people on the left, radical Marxist communists and whatever he throws in that bucket, vermin. I don't think I've heard the word vermin aside from in the 1940s, guy who repeated it over and over again about the Jews. But no, nothing to see here.
This is the problem with my free colleagues. They're afraid to offend. And if you're afraid to offend Donald Trump, then what are you going to do when you sit across from President Xi, you sit across from the Ayatollah, you sit across from Putin? You have to be willing to offend with the truth. And answer the question.
Bro, Vivek, shut up.
It's not about offending. It's about pointing out, do you want to elect somebody who will be older than Biden was when he went in 2021? I don't think he's as bad as Biden was at all, but I do think that over a 4-year period, it is not a job for somebody that's pushing 80. We need somebody that's younger. We need somebody that's going to be able to go in there and clean house on day one and do it for 2 terms.
And then DeSantis, like the little sniveling coward he is like, oh, no, I'll be even more fascist. Trump wasn't as fascist as he promised to be.
Is all 3 of them have been licking Donald Trump's boots for years for money and endorsements. Ron DeSantis, you've been a great
You
governor
haven't?
without actually begging Donald Trump for that endorsement. You accepted it a year ago. Same thing with Chris Christie as a lobbyist, begging them for COVID money for his special interests in New Jersey, prepping him for the debates last time around, these people are now Monday morning quarterbacking some decision he made. I think the real enemy is not Donald Trump. It's not even Joe Biden. It is the
Of
deep
course
state that at least
it's
Donald Trump
not.
attempted to take on. And if you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job? That the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11. That the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform. That the 2020 election was indeed stolen by big tech. That the 2016 election, the one that Trump won for sure, was also one that was stolen from him by the national security establishment.
Okay,
and actually
thank
one of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that it was false. There's a reason why I'm the only person on the stage who can say these things. That's what it's going to take. Not people who are licking his boots one time and now Monday morning quarterbacking and criticizing when it's convenient.
Governor Christie.
Wow. I mean, just wow. Wow. They are deranged, psychotic. And one of the craziest things is how Megyn Kelly just moves on. Just moves on like it was normal. He goes on a rant of conspiratorial nonsense, lies, glib propaganda. And then Megyn Kelly just goes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Governor Christie, you're just gonna let that go? You're just gonna let that go. Okay, so let's go through each fucking lie and deranged conspiracy theory that he went through there. First, that January 6th was an inside job. I actually love this one because they can't make up their fucking minds. On the one hand, they'll say it was an inside job, it was the Democrats, it was Antifa infiltration, and then on the other hand, they'll go, the January 6th political prisoners are rotting in jail and they need to be pardoned because actually the people on January 6th that were beating up cops and storming the Capitol were patriots and what they did was based in red pill, but also it's a left-wing conspiracy. It doesn't need to make sense. As they say in QAnon land and every other cult, just trust the plan. The voters are never challenged on this because right-wingers don't watch or read any other media that they don't already agree with. I know that in general in this country, we have a problem with media silos and people being stuck in their bubbles and their algorithms and not hearing other perspectives. That's a problem with everyone. But in the right, it is even worse because they, the GOP and right-wing media, has trained them not to believe anything, not to believe what they hear from any other news source, not to believe what they see in mainstream media, and not to believe their lying fucking eyes. Not only was there an investigation and committee hearings on January 6th that laid out exactly what happened, how Donald Trump contributed, and how his cronies in the White House at the time contributed, but we also know from the indictments and the people on January 6th who pleaded guilty and have been sentenced. And one of the indictments against Trump is for the coup and not January 6th, the riot. It's for creating a false elector scheme with the right wing doing it called the Green Bay Sweep. A detailed plan about fake electors and how they were going to use those electors over certified votes in the swing states and have Mike Pence throw it back to the states so they could overrule the will of the voters. That is going on in Georgia right now. A bunch of people have been indicted for it and pleaded guilty for it, including his little lying Christo-fascist lawyer, Jenna Ellis, who pleaded guilty, Kenneth Chesborough, who was the one who actually wrote fake electors in an email and is now cooperating with the investigation, and the Kraken lady, Cindy Powell, remember that lunatic? She pleaded guilty and she's now cooperating. But you wouldn't know that. I don't think the right even knows that that's happening because that's how much of a bubble they're in and that is how far their head is down the conspiratorial rabbit hole. Because I remember being told that the Kraken was going to be released. The Kraken was going to be released and we were all going to see that the election was stolen. All I've seen is her pleading guilty and admitting the whole thing was a fucking lie, which anyone with two brain cells to rub together could have seen at the time at that ridiculous, absurd press conference with Powell rattling off like she hasn't taken her meds and Rudy Giuliani with fucking hair dye rolling down his face. And Vivek knows that. When he was trying to get his name out there and run publicity for himself, he wrote in one of his books that January 6th was disgraceful. And he condemned Trump at the time. But like the sociopathic cretin that he is, once he realized he was going to run for president, he had to start licking Trump's boots. Then he went back on it. I love that he accuses the other ones of being bootlickers to Trump. Like, you need to sit the fuck down. Trump's boot is so thoroughly implanted in Vivek Ramaswamy's colon, he would need surgery to remove it. Like, you are the last one to talk, bitch. But of course, that didn't stop him from continuing to talk and continuing to lie. 9/11 was an inside job, of course. QAnon is right. JFK Jr. is still alive and helping Trump, who's actually still the president. I also love the ideological inconsistency of saying that the election was stolen from Trump in 2016, but also he won and it was fair. He's like, All the elections are fake and stolen, except for the one in 2016 that Trump absolutely, legitimately won, but also it was stolen from him from the deep state. See how this doesn't fucking make any sense? Again, it doesn't need to make sense. It's a cult. And then the election was stolen in 2020 by big tech. What they mean by that, because their attempt to claim that it was actually stolen with ballots has been debunked multiple times. So then they pivoted to it was stolen by big tech. And what they mean by that is because the Hunter Biden laptop dick pics were censored on Twitter. Yes, that's the reason why Trump lost. I'm sure that all the people that only voted for Biden because they wanted to get rid of Trump, people like me, who I supported Bernie in 2020, and I did not want Biden to win. I did not want him to win, and I only voted for him begrudgingly because I wanted Trump the fuck out. If I would have just seen Hunter Biden's dick pics, if I just would have known about the laptop, that would have changed my vote. The insanity, the shamelessness in which he's willing to lie. Like, this motherfucker wants to be a fascist so bad. I think that he wants to be in Trump's administration, and that's what he's auditioning for, and he hopes that he can just be one of his brown shirts. Absolute fucking insanity. Absolute insanity. What helps fascism rise is the normalization of it. The fact that he went on that psychotic rant and then Megyn Kelly didn't push back on it at all, no one did. No one called him out. They just moved on to the next question. I remember when I was a kid, I read the book Night, really struggling to understand how the Holocaust could have happened. I remember being like, how did this happen? How did people allow this to be carried out? I now understand. This is how it happened. So as I said, Megyn Kelly just moves on because she wants to talk about trans kids and how we can legislate them out of existence. It's interesting because Chris Christie's answer here actually is ideologically consistent with conservatism. I say in quotes because none of them mean what they say. They don't have any principles. They don't stand by any of their ideological convictions. Because Chris Christie's answer should be the answer of all of them because they love to talk about big government. No big government. No big parental rights. They're all about parental rights. No big government. Then they all want big government when it comes to this issue.
Do not favor a ban on trans medical treatments for minors, saying it's a parental rights issue. The surgeries done on minors involve cutting off body parts at a time when these kids cannot even legally smoke a cigarette. Kids who go from puberty boners to cross-sex hormones are at a much greater likelihood of winding up sterile. How is it that you think a parent should be able to okay these surgeries, never mind the sterilization of a child? And aren't you way too out of step on this issue to be the Republican nominee?
No, I'm not. Because Republicans believe in less government, not more. In less involvement with government, not more government involvement in people's lives. And you know what, Megan? I trust parents. And we're out there saying that we should empower parents in education. We should empower parents to make more decisions about where their kids go to school. I agree. We should empower parents to be teaching the values that they believe in their homes without the government telling them what those values should be. And yet, we want to take other parental rights away. I'm sorry. As a father of 4, I believe there is no one who loves my children more than me. There's no one who loves my children more than my wife. There's no one who cares more about their success and health in life than we do. Not some government bureaucrat, you look at these jokers down in Congress. It takes them 3 weeks to pick a speaker. And up until 2 days ago, they couldn't promote somebody in the military of the United States Senate who earned their new rank. And we're going to put my children's health and my decisions in their hands for them to make those decisions, for Joe Biden to make those decisions, for me and for my wife. Let me just say this. This is not something I favor. I think it's a very, very dangerous thing to do. But that's my opinion as a parent, Megan. And I get to make the decisions about my children, not anybody else. And every parent out there who's watching tonight, you start to turn over just a little bit of this authority, the authority they're going to take from you next, you're not going to like. I'll stand up for parents each and every time.
So you do not have the right to abuse your kids. This is cutting off their genitals. This is mutilating these minors. These are irreversible procedures. And this is something that other countries in Europe, like Sweden, once they started doing it, they saw it did incalculable damage. They've shut it down. I signed legislation in Florida banning the mutilation of minors because it is wrong. We cannot allow this to happen in this country. Transgenderism is a mental health disorder. We don't let you smoke a cigarette by the age of 18. We don't let you have an addictive drink of alcohol by the age of 21. And I just challenge Ron DeSantis to go one step further and support what I think is clearly within the authority to do using federal funds, just like Reagan did in '84 for the Highway Act that said the minimum drinking age needs to be 21. We can do the same thing when it comes to banning genital mutilation or chemical castration. I know Ron's been on the federal level. I'm crystal clear. That's where I stand. That's a mental health disorder. That's what it is.
I want you to know that the eliminationist rhetoric that they use around trans people is intentional and methodical. When they use terms like sterilize, chemical castration, mutilation, those are all on purpose to invoke fear and disgust in the person listening. The GOP are very good at this, and they have been good at it for years. Many of you won't remember, but there was once an abortion doctor named George Tiller, and the right-wing media, led by Bill O'Reilly, kept repeating over and over and over again, Tiller the baby killer, Tiller the baby killer, Tiller the baby killer. They all said it over and over and over again until he was assassinated. Unlike the Democrats, who are so useless when it comes to political messaging, and who don't really seem to care that much about getting power, and they're tripping all over their shoes all the time, The GOP are excellent when it comes to driving a narrative and disseminating propaganda. And that's exactly what this is. They want trans people not to exist. They want them eradicated, as Michael Knowles, the right-wing Christo-fascist, said. And they're not kidding. They mean it, and they've been repeating it over and over and over again. And they purposefully use that language because they want the average person who maybe doesn't pay attention to this shit to hear that and go, that's insane. The Democrats and the left and liberals are radical. They're mutilating children. Even if you're not really immersed in this stuff or you're an independent, I need you to understand that everything they're saying is a lie. Children are not getting trans-affirming surgeries. You need to be 18 to have a surgery unless you have parental consent. And even then, it's very rare. No doctor is just willy-nilly doing double mastectomies on 13-year-olds. It's not a thing. They're lying. But they want to fearmonger and they want to dehumanize trans people and they want to dehumanize trans-affirming doctors. Just like they did to George Tiller. You would never hear them talk about a 17-year-old maybe in Southern California who with parental consent got a boob job and say her mother should be criminalized. The doctor should be criminalized for mutilating her body. No, of course you wouldn't. This is just yet another excuse to further dehumanize trans people and put a target on doctors' backs. And for the 100th time, they have no fucking principles. Because if they did, they'd be taking Chris Christie's position. Chris Christie's position is, in fact, what you would believe if you were really a small government conservative. These motherfuckers haven't shut the fuck up about parental rights in like 3 years. Ron DeSantis passing the Parental Rights in Education bill in Florida. It's all about parental rights. Small government. But then all of a sudden, when it comes to this issue, nope, they want parents locked up, they want children taken away from their parents, and all of a sudden they want big government involved. They love to get big government involved in the decisions that you make with your doctor. I ask you again, don't you see how this makes no fucking sense? It's all small government, but we want to be in your doctor's office with you. Parents need more rights. I'm for parents' rights, except for if your child is trans and you want to talk to a doctor about trans-affirming care, then we want to take your kid away from you. When they say small government, all they mean by that is we don't want the government to do anything constructive for the American people. That's what it's always meant. It means we don't want them to pass infrastructure bills. We don't want social programs like Medicare and Medicaid. We don't want grandmas getting their Social Security check. We don't want corporations to pay any taxes. We don't want public schools. We want to privatize education. That's what they mean when they say small government. Because when it comes to any other issue, an issue of, let's say, a person who can get pregnant in an abortion or trans-affirming care, they want politicians right there near the stirrups.
Biological boys shouldn't be playing in girls' sports, and I will do everything I can to stop that because it's the women's issue of our time.
Women's issue of our time.
When discussing your Hindu faith in September, you seem to take a shot at Ambassador Haley, who is also Indian American and who converted to Christianity as an adult. You said, an easy thing for me to do, being a politician, is to shorten my name, profess to be a Christian, and then run. Make Vivek Vicky or whatever, end quote. Are you questioning Nikki Haley's Christian convictions? And why has your campaign made a point of referring to Ambassador Haley by her given first name, Nimrata, even though she's gone by Nikki for her whole life?
Well, my whole deal is if Nikki Haley, of all people, should know how to pronounce my name correctly, the rest of the news media can learn it. My deal is I'll call her Nikki when she can say my own name right. That's our little fun side bet there. Here's what I will say is deeper. I don't question her faith, but I question her authenticity. And I think that's deeper here. We were just talking about the trans issue. This is a symptom of a deeper cancer in American life. Identity politics. This new religion that says your race, your gender, and your sexuality are your identity. It is anti-American. It is meritocratic. It's anti-meritocratic, and it is dividing this country to a breaking point. And I've spoken about this to the left. My books are all about this. I preach this to the left, but it's even worse when Republicans try to play the same game. We're talking about that trans issue. And Nikki Haley's campaign launch video sounded like a woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light ad, talking about how she would kick in heels. At the first debate, she said that only a woman can get this job done. That's what she said. After the third debate, when I criticized Ron McDaniel after 5 failed years of leadership of this party, and criticized Nikki for her corrupt foreign dealings as a military contractor, she said that I have a woman problem. Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem. And I think that that's what people need to know. Nikki is corrupt. This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house.
What? The fucking side? Are you kidding me?
There's our donor puppet masters wielding their puppet right up here tonight. This is how this game is played. The puppet masters put up their puppet, and I reject the use of identity politics in this party. It's been a cancer coming from the left, and I'm sick and tired of the double standards the people of this country are too. Having two
It was invented by the right.
Thank you. Governor Haley, would you like to respond? No. It's not worth my time to respond to him.
And then he keeps talking. He keeps talking.
Now, by reason,
Vivek Ramaswamy calling it a mental disorder. I want you guys to remember that they used to say that about gay people. They used to say being gay was a mental disorder. These goblins want to bring back conversion therapy. Bro, back in the day, it used to be legal to just throw cis women in mental institutions if their husbands said they were crazy and hysterical. That's the world these people want to live in. Don't think I'm being hyperbolic because they say it over and over and over again. I'm not taking them out of context. context. These are their words. And Nikki Haley being like, this is the women's issue of our time, trans kids playing in sports. Actual lol. Can you imagine being so terminally online that you actually think that this is the women's issue of our time? Trans people in general are less than 1% of the population in a country of 335 million people. And an even smaller fraction of that actually even want to play sports. But that's the women's issue of our time? Like, be so fucking for real. They're so unserious. It's not only not the women's issue of our time, it's not an issue at all. I'm sorry if you've been led to believe that it is by Riley Gaines or whatever, the person who came in 5th place and is still crying about Leah Thomas, but it's not an issue. It's not an issue at fucking all. It's not even on the top 100 of issues that anybody should give a shit about. Except for, you should care about allowing trans people to be able to participate in sports that align with their gender identity. Stop pretending like you give a shit about women's sports, okay? Now all of a sudden they care because they want to discriminate against trans people. Well, trans women are women and should be able to participate in the sports that they choose. And then Vivek is asked about his Hindu faith and why he attacked Nikki Haley on her conversion to Christianity and attacks her for going by Nikki instead of her given name, even though she's always gone by Nikki. His answer is literally, oh, because she's inauthentic? Really? No. You are a slimy fucking snake and you are fake as hell. You don't get to call other people inauthentic, bro. Does anyone not think that Vivek Ramaswamy is not a fake fucking slimy used car salesman motherfucker? I'm hard pressed to think that anybody actually thinks that he's like just being honest and authentic. And he attacks her on the use of identity politics, which she definitely does engage in. She talks about how she's gonna be better because she's a woman and she wears heels. Blah, 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 yes, queen bullshit. Here's who I don't want to hear that from. Vivek Ramaswamy. He literally had the nerve to say, oh, the left is the ones who are always doing identity politics. We shouldn't do that on the right. You literally wrote the playbook of identity politics. People just didn't really talk about it openly in those terms until more women and people of color started running for office. But it was there. The use of identity politics as a weapon was created and perfected by white people in the conservative movement for decades. The white aggrieved, the white working class, welfare queen, all of those things were white identity grievance politics that were not only used as a weapon against people of color and women for decades, but were also used as a very effective weapon to pit poor white people against people of color as a way to drive class division between those people so that they couldn't consolidate and fight back against the oligarchy together. So that white trash poor motherfuckers will think that they have more in common with white billionaires than they do with the people of color in the working class. And it has worked, which is why you can see some fucking poor white person on dialysis living somewhere in bumfuck Alabama on food stamp, barely able to afford the rent in their trailer park, and they'll turn around and go, oh man, but it's those people of color, man. It's those immigrants taking our job. The right wing, with their white identity politics, have successfully convinced those people that they have more in common with fucking Jeff Bezos and the corporate overlords than they do with their fellow worker. So shut the fuck up about, the left uses identity politics. You bitches invented it. And again, I know that they're all corrupt, but I'm gonna need Vivek Ramaswamy to shut the fuck up. Shut all the fucks up. With his little sign, Nikki is corrupt. This motherfucker made his fortune in the pharmaceutical industry by defrauding seniors. But we're supposed to believe that he's the outsider. Just because you keep repeating that you're going to speak truth to power doesn't actually mean anything.
Governor Christie, this one's for you.
Trump and many of his supporters claim federal law enforcement agencies have abused his civil rights for the last 8 years by, among other things, spying on him and now prosecuting him
Mad
for Hillary
victim
Clinton and Joe Biden
complex.
with kid gloves. A recent Gallup poll shows that Americans think more highly of the U.S. Postal Service than they do the FBI or Justice Department. What would you do as president to restore the faith
Because
the
of
American people
you!
in these agencies?
I love how the right wing has spent decades perfecting their misinformation machine, and then they will plant a seed in their followers' heads and repeat it over and over, and then turn around and act surprised when people don't trust institutions. The Republicans only recently stopped trusting the FBI and the DOJ, not because of the long-standing problems of those agencies that have been around for a long time, but because the right wing has been telling them not to trust it. Ever since Trump got in office, he's been saying that over and over again because they have such a fucking fucking victim complex. And all of right-wing media has been repeating that he's a victim and that they're out to get him and you can't trust them. So miss me with the, oh, Americans have a lower approval rating of the DOJ, FBI, and CIA now because of you. The only reason why they believe all of those things that you're saying about the FBI going after the right and all of these people violating Trump's civil rights is because you have convinced them of that. But Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch ain't done yet.
Many Republicans are concerned about the legitimacy of elections. A federal judge just ruled that Pennsylvania must count undated mail-in ballots, and unlike Alabama, many states still don't require any identification to vote. What should states do now to increase election integrity and voter confidence for the 2024 election? Well, Tom, thanks for the question. Thanks for what you guys do at Judicial Watch. It's really, really important. There's a lot of corruption in this government. You guys are doing a great job. What you should do for election integrity is do what we did in Florida.
This is exhausting. We've already been over this a million times. They did 950,000 recounts. There were a million lawsuits. The lunatics that claim that the election was stolen could provide zero evidence. Zero. Even the people the right wing hired to do election recounts in Arizona couldn't prove it. But then he turns around and goes, people don't have confidence in the elections. Yes, because you guys keep lying about it. Because you go on TV every single day. You go on your podcast every single day and say it was stolen. You claim with no evidence that voter fraud is rampant. Voter fraud is not a thing. And the small amount of people who actually have committed voter fraud, most of them are Republicans. But they're really concerned now that people don't have confidence in the elections. You are the reason why people don't have confidence in them. Maybe if you guys didn't relentlessly lie about it, people would have trust in it. You repeat a lie often enough and people start to believe it. And this goes back to the psychotic tirade that Vivek Ramaswamy went on. The rant and conspiratorial laundry list he went down of all these things that were supposedly really happening. None of which have evidence, none of which are true, but they repeat it over and over again until their base starts to believe it. Take the Great Replacement Theory. For those of you who don't know, the Great Replacement Theory is a white supremacist conspiracy theory that the Jews, TM, are in charge of an international cabal that seeks to replace white Americans and white people in the West in general with migrants from other countries. Now you might be like, but Vivek Ramaswamy is not white. Why would he say that? White supremacy is an ideology that relies on recruiting people to keep it alive. That is why you will see white adjacent supremacists repeating those talking points. And Vivek Ramaswamy is happy to perpetuate that. And the really scary thing is that the Great Replacement Theory is not new. It's been around for a long time, but it used to be like in the dark corners of like white supremacist 4chan. But it has since made its way to the mainstream of conservative thought. You hear it on Fox News, you hear it on Newsmax, OAN, you hear it on all the right-wing podcasts. And it's this conspiracy theory that claims that the Jews are the puppet masters of the world and that they're trying to replace white people that inspired the white supremacists that carried out the massacre at the Tops grocery store in Buffalo. He had a manifesto talking about the Great Replacement Theory. So this isn't just rhetoric. These people are inspiring stochastic terrorism. Elon Musk, an incredibly powerful man, the richest man in the world, was perpetuating that just a few weeks ago. Tucker Carlson, who is still an extremely influential white supremacist, was just repeating that. He had Steve Bannon on his show like a week ago or so, claiming that the reason why those children got attacked in Ireland was because of the Great Replacement Theory. I did a video a couple weeks back of Candace Owens on Tucker Carlson's show where they were perpetuating the Great Replacement Theory. The fact that this dangerous, poisonous ideology has made its way not only into mainstream media, but on the fucking debate stage. I don't need to tell you how dangerous that is. It wasn't just the Tops grocery store in Buffalo that got massacred because of that theory. Remember a few years back when a white supremacist went into a Walmart in El Paso and massacred a bunch of people? That guy was also inspired by the Great Replacement Theory. So this isn't theoretical. This scumbag is perpetuating disgusting conspiracies that actually put people's lives in danger and have cost people their lives. And no one says anything. No one said anything. They just move on. These people are fucking dangerous. Every single one of them. I don't care how moderate they try to come across. Which brings me to the next question, where they pretend to care about anti-Semitism right after they're perpetuating Great Replacement Theory.
House Republicans yesterday hauled elite university presidents up to Capitol Hill to answer for the displays of anti-Semitism on college campuses. These leaders, including the president of Harvard, were asked whether calling for the genocide of the Jews would violate school policies against harassment and intimidation. All of them said it would depend on the context, including whether that speech veers into conduct. How do you think these schools and the rest of society should balance the imperative of free speech against the need to prevent radical activists from harassing and intimidating others? It was disgusting to see what happened.
Do we really need to listen to the entire bullshit answer, though? No, we don't. They don't give a fuck about anti-Semitism. If they did, they wouldn't be repeating anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. I really hated that entire fucking congressional hearing drama because it was such a fucking gotcha, and what annoys me so much about the university presidents is that they were given a softball that was a total layup that they could have just said, of course we don't condone it, and move the fuck on. But no, instead, the university presidents, after they've been prepped from some white shoe law firm, wouldn't answer the question, is calling for the genocide of the Jews bad? Okay, that was so easy. You could have just said, yeah, of course it is. Next. And of course, they didn't provide any evidence that anybody's calling for the genocide of the Jews on college campuses. Where's the evidence for that? But again, why did they have to give them that soundbite? It's annoying me that they gave them that soundbite because then they get to look like they're standing up against anti-Semitism and paint anyone who's on the left on these college campuses as anti-Semitic genocidal lunatic, which they are not. I have not seen anybody calling for the genocide of the Jews on any of these college campuses. They are calling for human rights of the Palestinians. They are calling for a ceasefire. So why, when the university presidents were asked, does calling for the genocide of all Jews violate your school code of conduct? The answer should have been yes and next. Because obviously that should violate any school's code of conduct. Like on the universities, you can't be all silence is violence, everything I don't like on campus is a microaggression, but also calling for genocide of the Jews is okay. Like fucking obviously it would violate any code of conduct. Obviously, if anyone else called for the genocide of any group of people, we would say that that violated the code of conduct. No. They had to just keep saying, oh, it depends on the context, which of course they fucking got backlash. And then all of them came out with like hostage apology videos walking it back. I don't want to give these fucking pieces of shit any more time to be like, we care so much about anti-Semitism, we condemn what happened at all these elite universities, because they don't actually fucking care. They don't give a shit about anti-Semitism, and they don't give a shit about free speech either, because they're all trying to shut down free thought, free speech, and any of the groups advocating for Palestine on their campuses. Further, it's just a bullshit distraction. Because while they're whining and crying about alleged, not even proven, calls for genocide of the Jews on their college campuses, an actual genocide is being carried out on the people of Gaza right now. So what's this fucking sideshow? How about they talk about that?
The second thing we need to do is Biden made a mistake not including anti-Zionism in the definition of anti-Semitism. If you don't think that Israel has a right to exist, that is anti-Semitic. We will change the definition so that every government, every school has to acknowledge the definition for what it is. The third thing is we really do need to ban TikTok once and for all. And let me tell you why. For every 30 minutes that someone watches TikTok, every day, they become 17% more anti-Semitic, more pro-Hamas based on doing that. We now know that 50% of adults...
And we're back on wanting to ban TikTok again. For every 30 minutes someone spends on TikTok, they become 17% more anti-Semitic. Where did she get that stat? She just pulled that out of her ass. I spend a lot of time on TikTok. But I guess according to her and all the Zionists who were always yelling at me in my comments, I would be anti-Semitic because I don't think that we should go right headlong into 1984 and change definitions. Because you got that second part? They want rules saying that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
You said, if you want to stop Xi from invading Taiwan, quote, let's open a branch of the NRA in Taiwan and put an AR-15 in the hands of every family and train them how to use it. That will give Xi a taste of American exceptionalism, end quote. The National Police in Taiwan announced a zero-gun policy last year. Is this a serious policy proposal? And if it isn't, why do you keep repeating it?
No, it's
Well,
not
it's part of a broader
serious.
deterrence strategy. And so I think I'm going to respectfully disagree with Ron here. I think the next U.S. president needs to be crystal clear that at least for the foreseeable future, the U.S. will absolutely defend Taiwan. And it is with that clarity that we actually achieve deterrence. But I have a broader strategy than that. We need to get onside our relationship with India, take it to the next level. India has to be able to block the Andaman Sea, which is where China gets most of its Middle Eastern oil supplies. That's critical. I also do believe the Second Amendment is a critical way of preventing foreign autocrats from being able to, it's worked in America, why wouldn't it work in Taiwan? So it's part of a broader strategy. But I do think that we need to be specific about our deterrence strategy, or else Xi Jinping is just encroaching by the day. And the reason why we're not doing it for China, I want to be crystal clear, is because we're scared. Why are we scared? Because we depend on them for our modern way of life. Why do we depend on them for our modern way of life? It's because Nikki Haley's latest friends like Larry Fink have created commingled economies with BlackRock telling Exxon and Chevron they can't drill here while being a shareholder
You
of
made
China.
your money in China, you
So
piece
it is
of
our economic
shit.
dependence on China that makes us scared. If that were a Russian spy balloon, we'd shot it down in an instant. If that were a Russian spy base in Cuba, we'd be actually going hard on it instead of turning the other way as we are with China. So it comes back down to that economic dependence. We cannot depend on them for our pharmaceuticals, our semiconductors, and people have been lied to for a long time. Our own military, the F-35 jets that we make in this country, depend on China, and it's going to take an outsider to fix that broken establishment.
Now, we've already established that Vivek Ramaswamy is a lying piece of shit. But really? Really? You're gonna bring the NRA to Taiwan? Why do you think you get to tell Taiwan what they can and can't do? Why do you think you get to just overrule their laws? This piece of shit made a ton of money in China, and now all of a sudden he's like, we need to decouple from China. You first. As I've said, they don't mean it, because if they actually cared about making things in the United States that we're relying on, they wouldn't have all voted against the Build Back Better bill. All of the Republicans voted against the bills that would actually bring manufacturing of vital things to the United States. This is just more excuses to fearmonger, warmonger, and do xenophobia against China. DeSantis is a coward who didn't want to actually answer, but Chris Christie gives the game away and says, yes, if we're in office, we will put troops on the ground in Taiwan.
I don't think we have constitutional authority over Taiwan to give them a Second Amendment. I think they can only do that for themselves. But look, I want to be really clear. Once again, I want to play the role of actually answering your question, which is if China went after Taiwan, you're absolutely right. I would, as president, have us go militarily and defend them.
Why any of them would even want to talk about healthcare is beyond me.
In years, Republicans have been burned by politicians' promises to repeal Obamacare. Trump repeatedly promised to replace it with, quote, something terrific, but failed to propose anything. You're now promising something better. But Florida has more uninsured people than almost any other state. Why should Americans trust you more than any other Republicans who've disappointed them on this issue?
Well, I think we have millions of Americans who do not have access to affordable health care. And it's not just getting some type of card and Medicaid, because a lot of times they don't even get access to doctors. You actually get access to care. The other thing is we have millions and millions of people who don't have access to good doctors and good hospitals. Florida did not expand Obamacare. I think the states that did that, I think are struggling financially. So that, yes, we declined to do that. I don't think that was the right policy to do. But we are going to go after the cost. You're paying too much for everything. We've actually addressed this in Florida in some ways, but you need price transparency. You need to hold the pharmaceuticals accountable. You need to hold big insurance and big government accountable. And we're going to get that done. I think it's very, very important economically. I think it's very, very important for the country that we get that done.
Florida didn't expand Medicaid after the Affordable Care Act was passed because they want to punish their citizens. That's why. Funds were to be distributed to every state that wanted to take it. And there were states like Florida that actually said, no, we don't want to expand Medicaid. Fuck our poor citizens. When you hear Ron DeSantis say, oh, well, the people that expanded Medicare, they're struggling, that's literally just made up. He just made that up. States that expanded Medicaid, like New York and California, have economies that expanded. There is zero evidence to support his claim. He doesn't get into specifics, and that's on purpose because he knows that the real answer as to why he didn't expand Medicaid looks really bad. So instead he just says, they're struggling. There's got to be some bullshit about fiscal responsibility I can pull out of my ass. You'll also notice that they love to talk about the bureaucracy, but then when it comes to something that actually does have a lot of waste and bureaucracy, they don't want to address it. Healthcare is one of those sectors. There is so much bullshit, unnecessary bullshit, bureaucracy in the healthcare system. But you'll notice these small government conservatives, which by that they mean abolish the IRS so rich people can't get taxed and abolish the Department of Education, suddenly are hands off when it comes to the bureaucratic healthcare system. Is anyone still buying this? Like, if you're a Republican, tell me. Are any of you still buying that the Republicans want to do anything on healthcare? They don't believe in the right to healthcare. They view healthcare as a privilege, as a commodity, not something that humans actually need. They completely stand behind gutting Medicaid, gutting Medicare. They're all funded by the private insurers that they pretend to hate and the big pharma that they pretend to hate. It's all just jabber. It's all just platitudes. They don't actually want to do anything because they are funded by those companies. And because we have a for-profit healthcare system in this country, it would cost those big corporations and big pharma a lot of money if anyone actually did anything to create and provide healthcare for the citizens. We don't have the money for it. I know. We're too busy paying for Israel to have healthcare for all their citizens. It's honestly funny to see them still try to pretend that they give a shit about healthcare and still doing the we're gonna repeal and replace Obamacare tap dance. Here's what I need you to understand. The reason why they fought so hard against Obamacare in the first place, even though what ended up passing was like a Republican Heritage Foundation corporate plan that still left private insurers in charge of everything, is because they were afraid that if some people got a taste of what it was like to have healthcare, they would want to keep it. And despite all the flaws of Obamacare, and there are many, it did expand Medicaid, including here in New York. And I can tell you, as someone who's been on Medicaid multiple times when I was unhoused and when I've been really poor, and who's been on private insurance through my job, private insurance is a fucking scam. It's a middleman mafia. They don't cover shit. They just charge you for everything, and they make you meet deductibles and out of pocket and insane premiums, and they pretend like you get freedom of what doctor you get to see, but you don't. When you have private insurance, you have to be in network to see certain doctors. It is a fucking nightmare. Medicaid is amazing. You can see most doctors and you don't have to deal with any of that fucking bullshit. And it is for that reason that they don't want to expand Medicaid, that they want to destroy what's left of Obamacare, that they don't ever want us having universal health care, because they see that when people like me got a taste of how great Medicaid can actually be, then I was like, what the fuck am I doing? What the fuck is this private insurance scam? Everything they say they're going to do in healthcare is a lie. It is simply a way to give for-profit healthcare companies and big pharma more power over you to line their pocket.
We don't have a healthcare system in this country. We have a sick care system. We need to start having diverse insurance options in a competitive marketplace that cover actual health, preventative medicine, diet, exercise, lifestyle, and otherwise. And here's how we deliver that. End the antitrust exemptions for health insurance companies. That's where the competitive marketplace begins. That's capitalism. That's the answer.
Okay.
So that sounds really nice, but he doesn't mean any of it. And neither do the voters. The GOP voters love to talk about breaking the system and tearing down the system and rooting out the corruption, but it's all just buzzwords. They just like sloganeering, because when it comes to actually taking any meaningful steps to address corruption, they don't want to do it. Ask any Republican or conservative how they feel about what Vivek said, and they'll agree. They'll be like, yeah, we need to get rid of the corruption, the lobbying, blah, 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 drain the swamp. But then when it comes to tangible steps you could take, like let's pass a bill banning lobbying from people who worked in the government. Let's crack down on lobbying, including foreign and American corporate lobbying. Ban members of Congress from being able to do insider trading. Ban dark money groups and corporate PACs from being able to spend unlimited money in campaigns. And do campaign finance reform. They're nowhere to be found because they don't actually care.
Operation Warp Speed. The Trump administration and private industry developed the COVID vaccine in record time. The program protected the drug companies from virtually all lawsuits over vaccine injuries. The government has a program to compensate for such harm, but critics say it is a black hole of bureaucracy. 12,000 claims filed, 10% decided, only 8 payouts so far, in a forum with no right to counsel, no hearings, no appeals. Mr. Trump says he's very proud of Warp Speed. Should he be?
Well, this question specifically on liability goes back to actually Reagan. And Reagan is a president who I admire. Many of us do. I think that reviving that spirit is in many ways going to be good for this country in so many ways. But one of the areas where he erred was this special form of lobbying to say that one kind of manufacturer, a vaccine manufacturer, cannot be sued for their product liability. So I pledge it is part of my legislative agenda. We will repeal that. Just like we will repeal every other form of crony capitalism. People who have been harmed by those vaccines deserve accountability. They cannot be forgotten Americans. And I think one of the top lessons we learned from that COVID pandemic is that free speech in this country is most important in those alleged times of emergency. If we had been allowed to openly debate the merits of those vaccines, they would have been never mandated in the way that they were. And in general, I don't think that we should want capitalism and democracy to share the same bed anymore. It's time for a clean divorce. Let companies be companies, but I don't like the crony capitalism. This dates back a long time in both parties. And I think that we need to end the lobbying. And I personally believe that if you have been working in the government, you should not lobby that government for 10 years. If you have been a government elected official doing deals with companies, be they Boeing or be they pharmaceutical companies, you should not join the board of that company for 10 years after. The former chairman of the FDA, the leader of the FDA, ended up on the board of Pfizer. Nikki Haley did deals with Boeing, ends up on the board of Boeing. I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. We need some basic principles that end the corruption in government. That's how we got the health insurance exemptions. That's how we got the pharmaceutical product liability exemptions. We end the corruption.
There Vivek Ramaswamy goes again, calling out corruption, saying things that sound nice. Like, we need to get a clean divorce between the corporations and the government. He says things that are true and sound really good, but then his answer is more for-profit healthcare companies. When they say things like freedom of choice and more competition, those are all just code words for more corporate control. That's why I don't listen to any of you anti-vaxxers and your like fake we take on big pharma nonsense, because you guys don't want to take them on in any meaningful way. If you really, any of you anti-vaxxers really wanted to take on big pharma, you would want to nationalize our healthcare system. Shut those motherfuckers down in the way they profit off us. Actually disentangle corporations' ownership over our government so that people can do things like sue manufacturers if they get injured by a vaccine. But you guys don't want that. You don't want that. You don't really want to repeal that law, and neither does he, because you'll notice he doesn't say anything ever about people who've been affected by gun violence being able to sue gun manufacturers, because that same law is used to prevent victims of mass shootings from being able to sue a manufacturer. And they work for corporations, not you. So they don't actually really want to get rid of that law. Vivek Ramaswamy is just a fucking slimeball liar who says things that sound populist, but he doesn't want to do any such thing. If you really think that a fucking slime bag that made his fortune ripping off seniors in the pharmaceutical industry, working with big pharma and big insurance, is suddenly going to get in office and to crack down on the very thing that made him a multimillionaire, I've got a vaccine removing elixir to sell ya. DeSantis just says a whole lot of nothing when it comes to healthcare, because it is true. Florida is one of the least insured states in the country. Their health outcomes are horrible. And he wants to expand that brutal model to the rest of the United States. They're, of course, lying when they say we need more options and price transparency. These are the same people that enabled laws to do surprise billing, that enable laws to allow people to go bankrupt from medical bills. That's not a thing in other countries. They allow hospitals to deny people care, to deny them their private insurance, to charge like $800 for ibuprofen. It's a black box of deregulated corporate garbage that they want to keep. They want to expand. They want no accountability for these big hospitals. They want no accountability for big pharma and no accountability for big insurance. It's all fake posturing. They want everything to be given to the corporations. They want our already shit show insane healthcare system to be even more deregulated, to be even more wild, wild west, to be even more monopolistic. And if you don't believe me, go back to 2017 when they had their proposed healthcare bill, and what a fucking joke that was. Ooh, that was a lot. That was pretty much the end of the debate. They did closing statements where they said, which president most inspired you? And of course, they're like, Reagan, even though Reagan was total trash. But he, in fact, and his ideology are a zombie that continue to live to this day in American politics. So they all have to go off about how great he is. And I think Vivek Ramaswamy just said some shit about the Founding Fathers because he likes to compare himself to the Founding Fathers and the people who wrote the Federalist Papers and blah, 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 because he's fucking delusional. I know this was long. It was long for me too. But what I hope for those of you who watched it take away from this is that these people are fascists. It is not just Trump. They are all extremely dangerous, and so are the people that hide in the shadows that fund them. It's all of them. It's the Supreme Court. It's the dark money billionaires that fund the Supreme Court. It's the corporations that fund them. They don't care about democracy. They want this to be a dictatorship. And listen, I know our country is a drunk fucking bitch mess. Late stage capitalism, late stage failing empire. Like, I know our country is a fucking shit show. But I know it can always get worse. And these Christo-fascists and their allies in the judiciary and in right-wing media, in the business community, in Congress, they want this to be a dictatorship. They want this to be an authoritarian Christian white state. They want it to be even more of a corporatocracy than it already is. They are fucking dangerous. They are dangerous to this country. They are dangerous to the planet. And I hope that if you are a Republican or a conservative, not that I think any of you are open-minded enough to even watch it, but I'm going to pretend for a second that you are. If you are a conservative, a small government conservative, they should terrify you. When they say small government, they mean oligarchy. They mean more of a plutocracy. They don't give a fuck about you. If you care about this country at all, even a little, you should never vote for a Republican, ever. President, down ballot, senator, congressperson, city council member, dog catcher, school board member, never. They are fascists, and if you say that you care so much about the country and you're a patriot, then you should be deeply worried about a party that wants this to be an authoritarian regime.